the red wave that wasn't. What went wrong? What happened? I think it's probably an appropriate time for the Republican Party to start asking some of these questions because, frankly, this ought to have been a layup, right? You've got a disastrous situation on the economic front, a disastrous situation on the border front. You've got problems, of course, overseas, which are going to lead to more economic problems here at home. And yet somehow you didn't get that big wave, which, when you looked at some of the polls, suggested might actually happen. So again, an important time for reflection and an important time to think about what the future is. Because I think the future can be still very, very bright. Hello. Good to have you here, everyone. Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish. Portions of today's program are brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals. We're going to talk more about Legacy Precious Metals coming up in just a little bit. But in the interim, you can go and check out their website, legacypminvestments.com, for your free investing guide. All right, we got a lot of economic data, speaking of precious metals, coming out this week. In fact, big report, of course, on inflation. Any which way you slice it, inflation is still here. And whether it goes down a little bit, whether it goes up a little bit, you're not going to see any major changes. It is my belief and the belief of many, many economists in the here and now, in the interim between now and say 2024, because look, this thing has left the station and inflation is very hard to control once it begins. And that clearly has taken place. So we'll get to that a little bit more. But before we do, on the political side of things, I had kind of hoped by now we'd have some more answers, but at present, it looks like it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take a little bit of time before we can safely say that the GOP has the House. It looks like that might happen, but again, you got to be careful until every last vote is counted in calling any of these things. And then simultaneously, you have a Senate which doesn't look like it's going to be conservative after all. And that's because of some notable losses, including Dr. Oz there in Pennsylvania. I had been a little bit reluctant on him all along, only because he didn't quite have the same pedigree as, by the way, the guy who I think should have run, who was the Bridgewater guy, the pedigree in terms of having lived there and been from there most of his life. And I think that sort of came through for people and came through for voters. So there's that situation. Maggie Hassan, I told you, remember the other day on the show that she would be very, very hard to beat in the state of New Hampshire, a state I know very, very well. Maggie Hassan, I can tell you, she's somebody who New Hampshire voters like because she's not too liberal. She's sort of mainstream, and it's not that populist a state. So I think having Don Bolduc there was going to be, unfortunately, for the country and for New Hampshire, not a successful endeavor. This is time for a regrouping. I've said all along that a lot of the policies of the previous administration made a lot of sense, certainly from an economic perspective, certainly from an international security perspective, and certainly from a domestic perspective. In the policies we're trying to do was really promote American values, American work ethic, American productivity, all the things that would make us stronger as a country. But somewhere along the way, right, a lot of things happened. And so this is a chance to say, okay, well, what does work? I'll tell you what works. Did you see DeSantis? My gosh. I mean, that is proof, is it not, that what he has done, is doing in Florida, is resonating with voters, resonating in huge ways. And I think that too often the left has miscalculated, shall we say, the Hispanic vote, and also a lot of the people in the middle that really want some reliability in terms of what the economy is going to look like and in terms of what life is going to look like. And I say life because remember what people have been through over the last couple of years with schools closing and businesses closing and constant masks for our young kids when we never really thought about how this was going to affect them in the long term, right? Adults could go out to a bar and not have to wear a mask, and yet our kids had to wear these masks in school. That was something that really, I think eventually, historically, when we look back on this, we will realize what a mistake that was. But to DeSantis's credit, he realized it early on. And so the rules were different in Florida. And his popularity really resonated there. And it was just such a trouncing there in Florida. So lots of things to think about right now. And I think we should all be increasingly alarmed about the threat of more and more debt coming into our economy and being taken on, while simultaneously us not having an ability to really pay it back, all while you've got this massive inflation. Now, hey, maybe we'll inflate our way out of debt. I don't know. It doesn't really work that way, though. I wish it were that simple. And when I say it doesn't work that way, I mean that because let's look at who holds the debt. Well, what if China suddenly decided that they're going to sell all this stuff? They're going to flood the market, right? The treasury bills. Well, that would be economically pretty darn challenging for us. You can't come up with a simple fix as much as I'd like to. I mean, ideally, you don't get yourself in this situation to begin with. Federal Reserve, Joe Biden. I mean, somebody was really asleep at the switch for way too long. So we are where we are. When you look at the market, for example, you've got a stock market that was rallying going into the election. And I think that really reflected the optimism that so many people had, that taxes wouldn't go up and that regulations wouldn't become too burdensome. And now that's really unraveling. I mean, again, it's too early to say which way any of this is. And I do think when push comes to shove, again, we'll see, but I think there's a pretty darn good chance that the GOP does get the House and you'll have some of this gridlock, which frankly should be good for markets. But nonetheless, it's not what people had expected. And so when you saw, of course, that the market was off so significantly on Wednesday, I would just advise you to anticipate a little bit more of that as people come to this realization that you've got a lot of very, very aggressive leftists that think it's okay to just keep printing money. And that's what they think. I played the sound for you a couple of times of the Democrat who runs our budget committee. I mean, imagine that, being head of the House Budget Committee, saying, well, you know what? This is really just like a game of Monopoly. It's a game of Monopoly. And guess what? We, the U.S., are the banker. So we can keep printing money. And that's what they call modern monetary theory. Well, modern monetary theory is absolutely, positively some kind of pie in the sky nonsense that ultimately leads us down paths such as what we're seeing right now and leads to that massive inflation. It's one of the reasons, of course, that I do like gold. And I'll just give a good plug for my friends over at Legacy Precious Metals. Actually, I wanted to tell you, by the way, that you really need to go to Legacy Precious Metals or to my website, trishintel.com, because we're going to have another live event that you can participate in. We actually are just getting the date together today. So let me pull this up for you. It's going to be happening in late November, and you can sign up. Go to trishintel.com. If you sign up for my newsletter, I will ensure that you get an invite to this. I will ensure that you get that invite. It's all free, and you're going to be able to talk directly to me in a live conversation, in a Zoom conversation, and you're going to be able to talk to all the experts we have on the program, including Charles Thorngren, who's the wonderful CEO of Legacy Precious Metals. I believe it's going to be November 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern, so mark your calendars and go sign up. Also, go to legacypminvestments.com today and get their free investing guide. Look, gold is an important part of your portfolio at any given time, in any given year. But right now, given the course that we're on, I think it's become increasingly attractive. I'm just going to take another look at the price here today because it's been down in the 1600s or even the 1500s. And I think that actually does make it more attractive. It's actually back up right now, 1708 and change, $1,708 an ounce. So we'll see. I mean, the dollar has been getting increasingly stronger, which causes some things, especially commodities, which are priced in dollars, to go a little bit lower. But that's actually an opportunity for you, in my estimation anyway, as long as you're in it for the long haul. So give them a call, 1-866-589-0560, 1-866-589-0560. We have a lot of news, of course, coming out this week in terms of inflation, in terms of who's running the government. I think that's kind of important stuff that we need to know of. And also what happens to Kevin McCarthy? I mean, can he really stay on in such a big position if, in fact, the House is run by the GOP. I mean, are people going to say, wait a second, maybe we need more change. Maybe we need to shake this up. Maybe we need some new blood there in charge in Congress on the GOP that can maybe have a little backbone and stand up for themselves and their party. These are questions that are going to come into play if, in fact, they get the House. But that's where we are. I mean, think about that. Sure didn't seem to be this way like 24 hours ago. It sure seemed like there was a very solid shot of getting so many of these states. And if anything, this should be the wake-up call that the Republican Party needs. We have to be thoughtful. We have to be measured. We have to be deliberate. We need to follow the example of what we saw out of Florida in terms of having politicians with real chops. By the way, I mean, not that, Ivy Leagues matter or anything, but let's be clear, DeSantis is like not just some schmo off the street like the mainstream media would have you believe. In fact, the guy was at Yale for his undergrad. He did Harvard Law School. He was part of the JAG program and was the attorney representing Navy SEALs over in Iraq. I mean, he's got a heck of a pedigree, which you never really hear about because they just want to paint him as some dumb guy. Well, that some dumb guy is pretty darn smart and he's pretty darn successful. And he's done a heck of a job for Florida. And you know what? The Florida voters, they came out in droves for him. So there's a takeaway for you. It can be done. We need real candidates that have done real stuff that can prove their worth to the American voters. Right? What do you think of that, Fluffy? And there he is. See, he's looking up now. I'm going to go get him. See, I said I'd go get you. I said I would go get you. Here he is. This is Fluffy. And Fluffy loves to be here in the studio with me. He's here pretty much every day. He loves to just hang out. And he's such a good dog. And you're such a good dog. You're almost like a cat, right? But you're not. You're not at all a cat. You're definitely not a cat. And part of the reason you're not a cat is because you're big and strong and healthy, and you bark a lot and you play a lot. But he's a wonderful little guy. Oh, he's going to start licking the microphone. Watch out! If you're listening to this on Apple iTunes, you do need to subscribe to my Trish Regan YouTube channel or my Rumble channel so you can actually see this guy. For real. He's worth seeing. He loves to sit on my lap. I'm going to let him stay there for just a minute and tell you about this product created by naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black. Wonderful guy, actually former Army Ranger himself, talking about great backgrounds. And he cares so much about health and nutrition, both for himself, his family, and of course his dogs. And so he created this. It's called Ruff Greens, RUFF Greens, GREENS. And you can get it at ruffgreens.com. It's got all the essential vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all those things that your dog needs. All you have to do is sprinkle a little bit on top of your pet's food. It's just a supplement. It's not in replacing the food at all. And I'm pretty sure he'll love it or she'll love it. I mean, this little guy loves it and loves to eat now. And so that's why you hear me talk about it so much, because I love knowing that he's getting all of his vitamins. It's really easy. And Dr. Dennis Black has a very special offer for fans and friends of this show right now. You can go to the website, ruffgreens.com, and you can get a free month supply. All you have to do is pay for shipping. So again, that's Ruff, RUFF, greens.com, ruffgreens.com, and sign up. It's well worth it. This guy, you know what? I think when I get a bag, it probably lasts us a little bit longer than most people. Right? It does, because you're so tiny. But really, it's about a month's supply for an average sized dog. So check it out, ruffgreens.com. And let's think about what's next here. Let's think about what's next, because I think that the country really is in need of so much help. And Fluffy, I know you'd be a great president, but that's not going to happen. Sometimes I really think you could almost take any 5-year-old off the street and make them a great president compared to some of these leaders that we have today. And it's a sad state that we're in, but we need better leadership, and we need to restore sort of this admiration for our leaders, our president. And it's sad only in that it used to be kids would grow up and think, one day maybe I could be president. I don't think we have a generation of young people that feels that way anymore. And it's symptomatic of so many things that are happening within our culture. So there's a lot that needs to change, and we can all be part of that. And I encourage you to be part of it. Let me know what you think. Weigh in the comments below, of course, and make sure you go to my website, trishintel.com, so that you can subscribe to the newsletter. And we'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks.